Good evening. A very warm welcome to all of you all at the Bangalore International Center and to our speakers. A round of applause. The Bangalore International Center is a place, a platform, a neutral platform, an inclusive platform for informed conversations and dialogues, arts and culture. Annually, the BIC now does about 500 programs. So for those of you who are interested, please do visit our website to see the diverse range of programs. And if you have not already registered and wish to get regular updates about the programs, do sign in and you shall hear from us. To set a brief context to this very interesting and unique panel today, Till Death Do Us Apart, our speakers and panelists will dive into the unholy state of matrimony. In the times that we live in, a telling signature is how the marital and the martial are being used interchangeably in long-term relationships. Indifference, infidelity are sort of signatures of relationships today. How does the future augur? Is it time for polyamorous relationships? Is marriage out of fashion? This and more is what the panelists will discuss, sort of give you a wide-angled view from their individual perspectives. Do bear with me. I'm going to just quickly read out their very impressive profiles. Visit the BIC websites where you can catch their prolific work. But for now, Shinie Antony, one of the speakers, Shinie Antony, a writer and editor, the founder-director of the Bangalore Literature Festival and the Bangalore Poetry Festival. Shinie is an author of books, Eden Abandoned, Edith's Story, The Girl Who Couldn't Love. Sorry. Dr. Vijay Nagaswami, author and relationship counselor. Vijay is an author of 6 books, 24/7 Marriage, Love and Court, 24/7 Marriage, The 50-50 Marriage, Three's a Crowd, Understanding and Surviving Marital Infidelity, and more. Selma Carvalho is the author of 3 non-fiction books. In fiction, she's the author of Sisterhoods of Swan and Notes on Marriage. She lives in London. The panel will be moderated by Prajwal Hegde, author and journalist, a senior editor with Times of India. She has the unique distinction of having reported for 4 Grand Slams. I don't know if that's the reason why she's been selected as the moderator. She's the author of books, What's Good About Falling and The Way We Were. Before I invite the speakers on stage, may I request all of you all to take a moment to put your mobiles on silent or switch it off. The panel discussion will be followed by a Q&A. The moderator will decide the sequence, so do keep your questions to ask of the speakers. And with that, I'm going to hand it over to the moderator and the speakers. Thank you.
I think we can go directly to the questions. And I was thinking the first question should be a part of the brief for the session, which is marriage going out of fashion? In Selma's book, she's made a wholesome defense of the institution, fractured somewhat, but that is the tenuous nature of relationships. In Shinie's Eden Abandoned, she's highlighted the iniquity of it. So the question is for Vijay, are marriages going out of fashion?
I never said those things. You have to ask them, but, are marriages going out of fashion? Not a chance. Not a chance. Not in a marriage-obsessed country. We have been obsessed with marriage right from the time a child is born until parents feel that they have settled their duties. But in urban areas, in metropolitan areas, yeah, people are beginning to question the necessity, the validity, and the comfort that they experience in marriage. There are a variety of reasons for that which we can go into as we go along. But, in general, I think one of the biggest problems is we've made marriage an institution. And because of that, we've forgotten that fundamentally it's just a relationship. And we lose perspective, we start playing roles in a marriage, and that's where things really start going south.
Hello? Right. Is it on? Can you hear me? Okay. Is marriage going out of fashion? I think I have to look at it from, because I live in London and I'm sort of exposed to a slightly different landscape. I think it's definitely under attack, a very serious attack. So my perspective is it's an institution that's under attack. Yes.
Okay, so this is for all three of you. Is there space, is there space for feminism in an arranged marriage? Which is really, still the biggest market really in the marriage.
You're asking me?
Yeah, all three of you.
But it should be, yeah, it should be.
So you see, I feel the etymology of arranged marriage and love marriage, it's very shaky. It's no longer, you can't say a marriage is arranged or it's love, because, you find that a lot of people, especially in the Syrian Christian community, what I've seen is men just go to church and point at some random woman that they find attractive or who happen to look up and meet their eye. And then they tell their mother. And the mother goes to that house, and so what is that? It's not like a typical arranged marriage, And I also feel in these so-called love marriages, especially between co-workers, it could just be that one of them feels, can you hear me? Mike? It could just be that, one of the co-workers is looking at the other one and thinking, okay, this is her salary, and this is her age, and this is her caste, this is her height, and this is how she behaves in office meetings. She's a pacifist. She would make a good wife. And it would be technically called a love marriage, but it would not be a love marriage. So I think the question should be, is there feminism? Is there space for feminism in any relationship, in any marriage? And I think where there are women, there would be space for feminism.
Yeah.
Well, just extending what Shinie was saying about these way people choose. I don't care for the word love marriages, because it implies there's no love in arranged marriages, which is not necessarily accurate. But that said, for want of better terms, I'll stick to those. One of the first things I ask any couples coming to see me is, what kind of marriage did you have? And I get usually 4 responses. One is love marriage, the other is arranged marriage, the third is a love-cum-arranged marriage, which basically means that you fall in love, families are cool with the whole thing, and then you have the arranged-cum-love marriage, which means they had a long engagement period and chose to fall in love. But is there scope for feminism? Whether the institution permits it or not, yes. There is a lot of feminism. There is a lot of activism, in fact, in many marriages. In fact, and this is not just my experience, it's the experience of couple therapists all over the world. The person who comes to seek help first is the woman. Husbands have to be brought in, kicking and screaming, a few sessions later. And this is largely because it's the woman who is emotionally more invested and she's closer to her emotions. So she's able to understand and she's able to ask for help. And she is making demands of her partner. And, today the four dreaded words that any man, really fears is, we need to talk. Those are the four words. That's because that's the last thing they want. That said, that stereotype is becoming more of a stereotype than actual reality. There are many more people, many more men today who are in touch with their feminine side, who are able to, even if not fully grasp the essence of feminism, they're at least able to have a sense of it and are able to appreciate that equality is important. Some of them, of course, only pay lip service to it. I believe in equal opportunities. I let my wife work kind of thing. So those kind of statements are also there. But equally, there are many, many more young men who are, much more sensitive than their fathers or grandfathers could ever hope to be. So I think there is space. It's still a small space, but it's a rapidly growing space.
Really, we have to define feminism, because I think women are being terribly undermined within marriage in the 21st century, because they have a lot of agency. But you see, women are essentially disadvantaged still, biologically and economically. And men are advantaged in these two. And I think we're at the stage where a whole new way of interaction is now upon us. There's social media, which has completely changed the dynamics of marriage, relationships, and commitment. And so we're really at a point where women are made to think that they're liberated, but that sort of liberation is then undermined because there's so much expected of women nowadays. We are expected to put out casual sex. We're expected to be okay with very, very risque sexual behaviors. And if you're not, then you're a prude. We're expected to go out and have careers and yet pick up the slack at home. We're expected to look after kids, even in the event where men leave and form separate. So really, the question of feminism is a very important one, because to what extent are we asserting agency?
Okay. I think we can go from that to financial independence. One of the things we were talking before we came in here was, does financial independence really make it easier for women to walk out of marriages? Is it one of the reasons why the divorce rate in India is going up? So in India, the divorce rate is the latest stats say that it's 1 in 100 marriages end up in divorce, whereas in the US, it's 50% of marriages end in divorce. And the percentage of working women in India is 37%, but it's only 12.5% that have white-collar jobs. So then again, you wonder whether that really is the reason. So I'd like you to weigh in on that. Is financial independence of the woman is the breaking factor in marriages?
Well, I wouldn't say it's the breaking factor. What it does is it empowers women. Women who in the past would never have considered that choice of walking out feel more empowered to walk off. Now, this doesn't mean they always do that. It doesn't mean that the mere empowerment, causes them to behave randomly or impulsively or unjustly. Certainly not. It's just that they feel more empowered, more comfortable, with themselves, and know they can walk out. But that said, today I find that most marriages are held together because of the EMI. You can't run a marriage on one EMI. You need two. So even if those people are getting divorced, they're getting married again. And again, we talk about this famous statistic of, 1 out of 2 in marriages in the United States end up getting divorced. It's not very accurate. It's just one of those things that people generally pull out. But it's a pretty high percentage. It's around 40% or something like that. But they still end up getting married again. It's almost like there is an inherent need for committed companionship. And if that's there, hopefully you would have resolved whatever issues in the first marriage. And therefore you used your first marriage as a training ground, or a testing ground to move on to the next one and the next one. And there are some people who are serial monogamists, who keep getting into relationship after relationship. But the fact that they need those relationships, tells me that even if women are empowered, they don't necessarily work out, particularly if they have a child or two. And there are also women who are not financially independent, but who feel empowered all the same. Like you may have read about that, that case recently. I can't remember in which city it was. The family court judge was aghast because a woman said that she needed a maintenance amount of 1,60,312 or something every month from her husband. Sorry? 6 lakhs, something like that. And, the account that she gave was for things like all branded clothes, I'm used to living this life, And finally, the judge came to the husband's support and said no. But God knows how many more such things happen. So it doesn't have to be, the empowerment that financial independence gives you. It could also be the empowerment that you have your partner on the run. It depends upon the power equation in the relationship as well.
I think we have to look at women being empowered. To what extent are they really empowered? So I always say this, the anatomy of male desire is very different from the anatomy of female desire. And I think we as women are innately, inherently, somehow programmed evolutionary-wise to want commitment. So even if we're earners now, we still seek commitment. But we're really at a point where men are not seeking commitment to that extent. Men have a buffet. Men have a buffet of opportunities, sexual encounters now. There's Tinder, there's sex on demand. There are Tinder applications you can go to, which makes the whole idea of commitment very monotonous. So they're seeking an experience. So even though we're empowered, you'll see that the age that a woman marries is increasing. The age that a man marries is increasing. So there's this conundrum now. We're empowered, but to what extent? And I feel that there's a lot of undermining of women because men still hold the cards.
Shinie, is there a lot of settling in marriages? Sorry? Is there a lot of settling in marriages where even though the woman is earning, the man is earning, whatever, you're used to being in a relationship that you just want to continue being in that? And from both sides, is there more women actually, to settle or, to...
I do feel that working women have made divorce more visible and more like there is an official divorce happening. But even before that, from really old times, divorce has always been there. It was just called marriage, It was never called divorce. Because you've been to your uncle's place or grandparents' parents' place or, some family friend's place. And it can be a 1 BHK, but it's the world's largest battlefield. You can feel that they may be sharing a bed, but they actually live in different continents. They are not really together. So a divorce was just originally called a marriage, And what I feel is you see marriage, it looks a relationship. Let's say a parting. It looks like a marriage. It sounds like a marriage. It's even called a marriage. But if you go close, and it's like a leaky gas connection. There's something toxic. Nobody entering that radius is untouched by the toxicity in that relationship. But on paper, it's a marriage. It's a good marriage. It will last till one of them or both of them die.
And just extending what Shinie was saying, while it was never called divorce, I'm sure everybody knows in their families, a grandparent or a grandaunt was living with one of the children and their partner was living with another of the children, but they were still married. They may not engage with each other, they may not speak together, but they were still married simply because divorce was anathema. And today, in response to whether people are just settling, divorce has become very expensive. For some people, it's too expensive to get divorced, so they'd much rather, be together, even though they don't communicate. There is a lot of toxicity, as Shinie was saying, but they just manage workarounds.
It's like I was telling Selma that, we've seen families in railway compartments. The berths are so close by, there are ticketless travelers, but we still have that, that little area is ours. So we're very used to that, and that's how couples, I think, go forward in a combat.
Selma and Shinie, I'd like you all to do a little bit of reading from your books. And Vijay, I have a question for you, so don't.
Notes on a marriage. Okay, this is the mother of the protagonist, actually. So it has two sort of marriages. It has various marriages in this. Anju, let me tell you about marriage. You wonder where the bottom is in a marriage. Then you hit the bottom and it gives way. And you discover there are further depths to sink to, further degradations you're willing to endure. You sink lower and lower still. You lose yourself, but you still survive, because you have the will to survive. Nothing else matters but your survival. Create a universe populated with thought, live in it. That's how we survive, by creating our own personal universe. That's how I survived. That's really sad, it really is, the daughter says. And the mother says, our children, Anju, they rescue us from ourselves. However bottomless a marriage feels, they rescue us. You'll see. How do they rescue marriages? You begin to let go of the present. You begin to wade a little into these wonderful, magical futures you see growing before you. Fragile, amorphous, but brighter than your own life. I was a prop in your marriage. No, you weren't. Loving a child together is a profound experience of human bonding. You see reflected in that common love something almost spiritual, transcendent. I shared that with your father, nothing else. We had nothing else in common, but we had that. We both loved you, love you very much. Thank you.
I just want to take off on what she read. I do feel that children change the dimensions of a relationship, of what we call a marriage or divorce, and the new love story is between co-parents. That relationship is equally difficult to manage, just like a marriage. If a marriage ends, you still have children, and nobody really can predict what emotional shape the very fact that children start to exist. what emotional shape are you left in? So like she says, in one of the parts, kids are props in a marriage. And sometimes we are told, have a child. If the marriage is not working out, there are problems in the marriage, have a child. And that child grows up and says, I'm not going to get married. You wonder why. And Vijay, I remember in one of your books, I don't know which one, you talk about how the strength of a couple is tested, or how do you know that a marriage is successful or that the couple have a very strong relationship and they're going to go the distance, is if there is a loss of child. That kind of a loss can either bind a couple together who already have a good history of a solid marriage, or it can break them apart, bringing up all the cracks and fissures in their marriage. Would you like to comment?
Yeah, that's a very valid thing. But before I comment on that, in response to what you were saying about people saying, have a child, it'll bring you both close together, never happens. If you are already a close couple, yes, the bonding will become that much stronger. But if you are not a close couple and you're looking for that little creature to bind you, that's a hell of a lot of pressure on that thing, And then he has to grow up with that pressure. And, it's such a difficult position that you're already putting the child in. But as Shinie said, dealing with the loss of a loved child, now that is a huge, huge pressure on marriage. I've seen it break up many marriages, even marriages that I thought were actually close. It's almost like a feeling, not that they were blaming each other or anything, because the cause of death could be anything. But if it happens, they somehow feel so depressed. Because when somebody dies, we always tend to, blame it on ourselves. So what we're really doing is full of self-recrimination, and neither partner being available to each other to support them through probably one of the most major crises in their lives.
I again want to quote Vijay. He had come here for the book launch of To D or Not To D, which was about divorce. And when he stopped talking and it was opened out to the people, there were many people who asked emotional questions to him. You could see that it was a personal moment for them. They'd come there thinking, I have problems, and I'm going to get the answer from Vijay. So one of them, I think towards the end, asked very emotionally, how does one know that one's marriage has ended? How does one know that? And he said, no third party has to come and tell you your marriage has ended. The minute you feel your marriage has ended, it has ended. Do you remember saying that?
Well, I don't, but I think it's something I would have said. Okay, it certainly sounds compatible. But I think, Shinie, you're doing everything to postpone your reading, right?
This book is called Eden Abandoned, the story of Lilith. Lilith was Adam's first wife before Eve, and Eve was constructed out of Adam's body when God put him to sleep and took out his rib and made Eve. But Lilith and Adam were created equal, and when the relationship broke down, it had many, many, many reasons. Adam dragged in game that I peeled, diced, sliced, ground, minced, and served. He was protecting me from the world. I was protecting him from what? Only from the drab dreariness of domesticity. Servitude is labeled love and glorified in marriages. Human trafficking begins at home. You have children and the slave trade prospers. And when the two-way violence inevitably erupts, men look surprised. Women are born in survival mode. Their profession, they're told, is to love. But what is this love they neither know nor see? This illiquid, no return on investment, invisible land they must buy with all their soul money.
I've read both the books. I would heartily recommend both. They're both from different ends of the spectrum, both written differently, but beautifully. And they don't take a hell of a lot of time to read. You can see them, they're both very slim volumes, but very, very profound ones. I would heartily recommend them.
Thank you.
Yeah, me too. Both of them are really, really fabulous books. But Vijay, you're not going to get away without a question because you're not doing any reading. So this is from, we were all discussing this. Can marriages really be a 50-50 affair? Is it possible at all, even in this time and age? Can it really be 50-50?
Right. I think the question is coming from, the fact that one of my books was called The 50-50 Marriage. Now, what I wrote about and what I was speaking about when I said 50-50 is not so much as of, what actually the content of the relationship is, but the content of the commitment is. If both are equally committed to a marriage, then you can, move it from toxicity to detoxify it and take it to a better place. But we all find it so hard to deal with this whole term commitment. We basically think it's selling our souls to our partners, which it isn't. When we say commitment, we are only committing to ourselves that I'll do my best to work as hard on my marriage as possible. That's all. Nothing more, nothing less. Which is why I don't have a problem with divorce. I remember somebody asking me, so now you've gone to the other side. You were writing about marriages, now you're writing about divorce. I said, one is the extension of the other, These are not sides. Divorce is a reality. All I'm saying is, and I'm saying the same about whether you're getting married or getting divorced, try and do it well, Try and do it amicably or not at all, Because there's no place for hostility or negativity in any kind of relationship because it detracts from it, Now, if you read, for instance, Selma's book, there's no real hostility overtly, but there is always an underlying feeling of sadness, which comes across very well in the book, And the sadness is not necessarily from the partner, it comes from within, And that sadness impacts upon many relationships. But one thing that, her protagonist, one couple in her protagonist, that's Fredo and Anju didn't have, was they did not have any indifference, To me, indifference is the greatest killer. So when I say 50-50, I mean the commitment should be equal, Can a relationship, I've seen so many couples come and tell me, actually I think ours is a 70-30 marriage. How they arrived at that number, I don't know. But somehow they seem to have worked out that, one person is not pulling their weight. That's basically what it means. And when you say not pulling the weight, it basically refers more to sharing of domestic chores, sharing of domestic responsibilities, and having too many expectations of the partner, which is what finally ends up breaking the back of most marriages. But can marriages be 50-50? Sure. If you take the word marriage out of it and just call it a relationship, yeah. But marriage by itself, the institution that we all, are revering, challenging, doing whatever with it, that institution does not permit 50-50 because it is an unequally created and unequally designed. And only the laws can help us. Unfortunately, the good laws, are more abused than used, And that really makes things even more lopsided.
Can I just add? The 50-50 thing should actually be marriage and divorce. If there are 50 marriages to 50 divorces, and people talk about divorce just like they talk about a marriage, because, you'll see that, I want a divorce to have the sound of Shehnai and the scent of Mehendi. Why is that missing from a divorce? Because, when people are getting married much in advance, Like they'll publicly announce the date, there's golden lettering over handmade paper. But a divorce you come to know because your domestic help is gossiping to you and whispering it into your ears. It's very different. And the thing is, just like any marriage has its share of conflicts, any divorce also has its moments of unconditional love.
Yeah, and to add to what Shinie just said, I'm terribly sorry to keep popping up every now and again, but she's just generating a chain of thoughts. To add to what she said, when you go and tell somebody you're married, oh, congratulations, wonderful. You tell somebody you're divorced, oh, I'm very sorry. What are you sorry for? It was a choice I made, right? And I'm perfectly happy to have done it. So it's almost like, and that's one of the reasons why I wrote the book, divorce should be talked about. I personally believe every couple, at least one time during their marriage, should discuss divorce. They can then choose to act on it or never bring it up again. But it shouldn't be used like a sword of Damocles that's hanging over the marriage.
I wanted to, Selma, maybe if you go first. About your book, it's got this great range of characters. I want to know how you went about crafting it and how long did you take to write it? And Selma's done a great job with description of traits of her characters, especially her lead characters, Anju and Fredo. How long did you take to actually write it, and how did you go about? How was that process?
Yeah, if you read both my books, they have a clue as to how long it takes me to write it, because they start in a certain season and then they end. So it takes me typically a year to write it, and the seasons are very much part of the books. And nature is very much part of the books. And how did I go about crafting it? I think it's a reaction to my first book, which is a different sort of relationship where the woman chooses to leave her toxic relationship. And so in this one, I wanted to, and she's a younger woman, and she's very chaotic. And in this one, I wanted to look at marriage. If there can be something which holds people together, rather than, the action of tearing it apart. And I have a young daughter who's 20 years old, and I'm very fascinated by her life. I'm very intrigued by this concept that I look at my mother's life. My mother married the love of her life at 25, which in her generation was an older bride. And, they had a marriage of 60-odd years, and but that was nothing spectacular. It was what women in her generation expected would happen to them. They would marry, and they would live out. And my daughter lives today in the 21st century. That is not at all an expectation for her. There is not an expectation at all that she's going to find a committed partner at the age in her 20s who's willing to commit to her, who's willing to have children, and who's willing to spend the rest of 60-odd years. So is my daughter really in a better place in her life than my mother was? Has there really been any sort of ground that we've gained as women? And so I'm very intrigued by this concept, because I really think that, relationships have become so transactional. They've turned into, as I hinted earlier, this thrill sort of seeking. And I just wanted to present a picture where marriages are hard work. They're incredibly hard work. But are they, in the long term, beneficial to humankind? Do they bring some merit? Is there any merit to them?
Thank you. In page, I think 139, you make a really good defense of that, of the institution.
I'm surprised you actually remember the
Yeah, I
page
remember
number.
that. Yeah, it was really good. It grew into me, like that paragraph says. Shinie's Eden Abandoned is, it's, I think, one of the best literary pieces I've read in a really, really long time. It is just, it's feminism, it's fire, it's, I think, also a really brave thing that she did in writing that. And Shinie, how did you go about, why did you decide on Lilith and her story? Did you worry that you were on the wrong side of storytelling? I'm a romance author. I write happily ever after stories. So were you ever worried?
Prajwal's written this book. Her new book is called The Way We Were.
Yeah.
And what I find similar between our books is the fact that there is a very, very painful past that the two lovers share. And they go through that trial by fire before they actually reunite at the end. And I feel that part, any relationship that goes through conflict, through problems and issues, and then comes back, I think that is the real test. After a period of separation, after you've had that, you've headed to armies, and then if you do come together, don't you feel that when they do come together, they know by now that exit routes exist? And I think in any relationship, in any marriage, this whole thing about divorce exists, and that's a choice open to me. Whether I'm Mrs. or I stop being a Mrs. so-and-so, my status in society, my dreams, my aims, my relationships, everything remains the same. And in Lilith's case, coming back to Lilith, she is very sure that this is over, So for her, and again, to quote another writer, Atish Tasir has written The Way Things Were, slightly different, one word different from your title, in which there is this marriage that goes really belly up, flops spectacularly, and there's a lot of dialogues between the couple and a lot of takeaway by them. And what he says in the story is that they have so much knowledge, they have so much information, but for no use. Where are they going to take this information? Because this information pertains to this particular relationship, and it's not useful anymore. So I feel Lilith has, of course, she also hopes, like your heroine, that Adam will just burst in on her and say, Eve, oh no, that's just a rumor. I couldn't stand her. I want to get back with you. I mean, maybe there's a part of her that hopes for that. But there's also a part that understands that in all relationships, the evolution comes when you're thoroughly betrayed. It could be your family, it could be society, it could be your lover, it could be your child. But at the end of the day, in this book, in Lilith, it's God himself who's like a father. And she has that usual father-daughter relationship with him. And finally, when he also walks out on her, that's when she realizes that this question about a partner and marriage and all of that is redundant as long as you you cannot trust yourself, you cannot rely on yourself. And that's the only person we have in the end. We have this body, we have this one mind and this one heart. We really do not have anybody else in life.
Fabulous. We have a little more time before we open it up.
Shinie, one question. On reading the book, it's evident that you love Lilith and you can't bear Eve. Because the way you've written Eve, is like an antithesis to Lilith. Am I right in that understanding?
But I have, that's how she thinks of Eve when she sees her. Because you always think that somebody who loved you and loved somebody else, now that's not true love. That what you shared with that person was raw, elemental, and real, and this is something spurious, and he's going to come back to me. So when she looks at Eve, she looks at her like someone inferior to her, and she wants that there is this human need to laugh at her, mock her, and feel superior. But once Eve starts tending to Lilith, I think Lilith changes her mind, and she realizes that there are women who feel very contented to tend to other people and to care and to love, and Lilith immediately starts feeling like a drama queen, like hysterical and also like a cheap person. So I think.
Yeah, so Vijay, this is for all of you again. Is fidelity overrated?
I don't know about that, but all I can say is that, marriage is monogamy. And monogamy and infidelity are just not compatible with each other. Monogamy and...
Hello?
Hello? That's okay now. Monogamy and infidelity are not really compatible with each other. I'm not saying you have to be in a monogamous relationship. But if you are, then you got to get it right. Then it's basically an exclusive relationship with your partner. If you choose not to be, there are many other opportunities, options. You can, for instance, just be, have friends with benefits and not be in a monogamous situation. You can just hook up every now and again with whoever you choose. And this is something I tell most of my young people who are looking, to find a partner when they look on Tinder, Bumble, etc. They basically hook up apps. They're not really long-term relationship apps. You can have hookups. You can have, just one-nighters if you so choose. Or you can find yourself, people who are, polyamorous. And if you opt for polyamory, then you really have to work hard on yourself, because polyamory is not, most people think it's just having multiple partners. It's not just about sex. Polyamory is having, actually many relationships, of equal intensity. And each of your partners is okay with those, and they also have other relationships. And you have to practice, an emotion called compassion, which is the exact opposite of jealousy and envy. And it's not easy to be in a polyamorous, equation. And of course, today you have this other brilliant thing which people call situationships. I'm not clear what precisely it seems to be a wastebasket kind of thing, where everything that doesn't fall into any of the others is a situationship. So you can choose any of these. But why infidelity when you're in a monogamous relationship? That's the thing I don't get. And people have an extraordinary way of messing up their lives, And, they get into, infidelity kind of situations over and over again. It's almost like they just can't prevent themselves from doing so. That's because everybody's also searching for the soulmate, What or who a soulmate is, I don't think has ever been adequately defined. But a soulmate is basically anybody who's not your partner, And basically you're looking for that soulmate who you believe is lurking somewhere. My way of looking at it is you get out of your relationship if you're so unhappy in your relationship, or you can't work on your relationship, and then go looking for that soulmate, But many people give me the analogy of, you can't leave one job without finding another job, Okay, if that's the way they look at marriage, what more can I say?
There was this extramarital app which came from abroad to India, and one of the statistics they said was Bangalore is the most, extramaritally
I remember reading that.
hotspot, and it also gave a very weird ratio. It said something like 70% of married men are having affairs, but only 10% of married women are having affairs. Who are these men having affairs with? So there was this kind of discrepancy, and Selma, you should talk about Ashley Madison website also. And I think the thing that the polyamorous thing has done, it has taken away the spice from being unfaithful. You know, some people, they live on that thing, you know. Have I switched off my phone? Is my phone with me? Will he see my phone? I'm in the loo, my phone is outside. You know, that's the kind of thing that keeps them going. And then now it's like, you know, I'm with so-and-so, and you're free to go with so-and-so. I mean, it takes away that, you know, chinna veedu excitement.
But those
that
kind of
takes
people
place.
can never get into polyamorous relationships because they want that adrenaline buzz.
Yeah, they want the drama and the hysteria.
I think it's actually, I don't have any funny anecdotes with this. I have only serious things to say. I think really the accessibility, the ease with which you can be unfaithful today is really what's undermining marriage in a very, very serious way. And see, it has very serious repercussions for women. Women who are divorced, statistically, will fall into economic ruin. They'll become child carers. They won't go on to have second families, unlike men. So again, I come back to how advantaged are we? And as far as polyamorous relationships go, you know, I'm just fascinated by these Latter-day Saints who take on many wives and they call them sister wives or something. And the trauma in these relationships is haunting. I don't think people are able to share spouses, at least not in the 21st century.
I heard.
No, you know, I think there's almost 500,000, you know, they call, some of them are called polys, which I think is a dreadful term. I prefer to call them people in polyamorous relationships. There's almost 500,000 of them in the United States. And they take out, it's like the pride parades. You know, the polys also participate in those pride parades. Basically, they say that it makes them feel more alive. They're not looking for everything from one partner. You know, they can spread it out, you know. So there's much less tension in their relationships, so they say. But it's still early days. And I understand that, you know, being polyamorous happens more in, you know, in some parts of the country. Bangalore is one of them. And there are many polyamorous, you can't call them couples, but polyamorous groups, you know. And they seem to be doing okay, but it's still early days. And like you said, you know, getting your head around it is not always the easiest thing. When I first heard about it, I was wondering, how the hell is this going to work, you know? It's bad enough having one partner, you know, and having so many of them, and they're having so many of their own, you know. Okay, it sounds very, you know, hippy-dippy and all of that, but it's far more, you know, committed and realistic than that, you know.
I recently read this term, symbiosexual. So it was the first time I came across that word. And what it means is an individual who's attracted to the chemistry between another couple. And they are like an assistant spouse. They come into the marriage as an assistant or deputy of one of those people. So essentially what they're saying is, it's like this huge compliment, you know, you're such a great couple, please let me be this invisible part of your marriage. Yeah, it's a new thing.
Welcome to the internet.
I think in a polyamorous, from what I've seen, first of all, in my case, there'd be a high rate of homicide. But from what I've seen, it's always the woman. It's always these sister wives who are making all the adjustments, but the man is not making any adjustment. So there's such a skewed imbalance of power in these relationships.
That is there. Certainly in our country, that is there, you know. The woman never has the power, which is why, in fact, it became an institution, you know, and not just being a space for procreation, but it became a space where responsibility needs to be taken. In those days of the hunter-gatherer and the, the nurturer kind of division of labor, something needed to happen to protect them, to keep them together. For a while, religion did that. But then after a while, religion wasn't able to do it anymore. So you needed legal systems. And once the law comes in, it makes it an institution. And then, although the laws are supposed to be protective, they're called marriage laws, but they're essentially about divorce. They're not really about how to choose your partner and how to get married and all of that. They're about how to conduct a divorce and when you can actually get divorced. But it was meant to protect. But now they've outlived that usefulness. And we need to really be more creative and look at this whole thing differently. First off, stop thinking of it as an institution. Start looking upon it as just a relationship between two committed people who want to be in a monogamous relationship. That's about it.
Shall we open it out now? Yeah. Is there anyone wants to ask questions? Yeah.
Hello.
Oh, you went and gave it to a man. We are talking about empowerment here. That's cool. I was just kidding.
Yeah, wait till you hear my question. My question calls upon the wisdom of all four panelists. I would like to know, we are only speaking about heterosexual relationships here. What about homosexual people who want to get married? One of the partners may not want to get married because, marriage is also out of a compulsion of a social nature, which has a template. After all these years in different countries, marriage laws between heterosexual people, and there is a template of procreation, there is a template of raising children, there is a template of monogamy. But where is the feeling lying what is the need if it arises in a same-sex couple to get married, what do you think are the lines to think whether you want to get married or not, because you don't have a social template to follow, and even the law does not permit it?
I don't know why I picked up the mic, but I just wanted to say there's a very interesting statistic with homosexual relationships, which then confirms the roles that men and women play. Like homosexual men are more likely to have casual sex and not yearn for committed relationships, as opposed to lesbian couples who do yearn for committed relationships. And as for the template, I'm not an authority on this, but from what I've observed, when homosexual couples choose to have to marry, they pretty much follow the same template as any heterosexual couple. I don't know if there are any differences, but Dr. Vijay will be able to.
No, just to add to that, I do work with a lot of LGBT couples, and they have a hard time of it in our country, largely because they have to deal not just with the fact that it's illegal and that they can't actually get married or can't even, openly say that they're a couple or live together, have, joint accounts, joint property, whatever. But also the fact that they have to deal with their families. And families are never, I won't say never, they're very rarely openly accepting of their children's gayness. Because they feel that, either it's abnormal, and unfortunately there are far too many mental health professionals in our country who are offering conversion therapies, which is illegal, it's banned, but they still do. And there's still many people who, seek them, But they have to deal with the fact that the social acceptance is very limited. But the basic template of the relationship is not very different. You need to work on loving each other, trusting each other, respecting each other, and being intimate with each other, working towards companionship, because that's what we're all finally working for, whether you're straight or gay. But the placement of this template in the larger social template, that's where it becomes problematic in our country. And you would have thought that the United States is the haven. But now with all this anti-LGBT stuff going around, all this anti-wokery kind of thing, I don't know where we're headed really. All I can say is that, LGBT couples are as much, if not more committed than straight couples. They just want an opportunity to just be left to themselves, which unfortunately they don't get.
My question is to all the panelists and the moderator. We've spoken about commitment and relationships. I guess an ending of any relationship is sad. What is the informal support systems that either nurture or help in easing out and going your separate ways in terms of sisterhood, in terms of brotherhood? I just want some illumination on that aspect. The informal systems that aid or bring together. You've alluded to it in your book when Eve is taking care, and I think there's some reference to in your book the sort of the informal structure that helps to either accept or break away.
It's just a sisterhood for women. You can't, perhaps mothers as well. I think mothers play a huge role in how we shape our marriages.
In my book, I do say one thing, that, we are conditioned actually to be, by the way, heterosexual also. A lot of people, I think, they come into their actual orientation much later in life. I've always felt if my mother covered up the backyard tree and told me, never look at it, I might have tried to elope with that tree, So it's always about, my mother was very careful about, this, a male guest coming in. So what would I be wearing? How would I be sitting? Whether I'm required to come into the drawing room at all. So from that small age, I started thinking, okay, it's all about men. That's the gender that I'm supposed to keep myself away from. And by the way, I've always thought that in India, when you're growing up and when you're young, it's a lovely place for homosexual people. Because your mother will tell you, bring your girlfriend. You can shut the bedroom door the whole night. And she's so happy the next day because you're holding hands. And, that whole thing about men bonding and females bonding, India actively encourages it. We only frown upon the marriage. We are very much for the homosexual relationships. So I feel that, once this idea is injected into our brain that we need to find a man, and like he said, a soulmate, So then we start looking at all the men who come forward to, or sometimes we just like a man because he's not looking at us. So we go through a very hormone-fueled youth to arrive into middle age, and then we realize that the actual person that we are looking for is the sisterhood. A friend, a girlfriend who's gone through somewhat the same things that you've gone through, who understands you without you opening your mouth, what you've been through. And I think that kind of a sister, she'll completely elevate your mood. She knows you're feeling a little low. I've really been pampered by my girlfriends. Of course, some of my male friends too, who are very good cooks and who bake for me and who pamper me like that. But I do feel if I know a girlfriend of mine is going through an emotionally low period in her life, I do want her to come over and I want her to rest. I want her to get a massage. I want her to, and then just bitch about men in general. And then, watch a movie where, like Promising Young Woman, where they kill the men. And then we just kind of feel so bonded, and we feel that in earth the the most surviving relationship is between the same genders.
Yeah, kitty parties have become husband-bashing parties now.
Yeah, I have a question. When we talk about affairs and polyamory, we predominantly talk about physical intimacy outside the structure of marriage. But what about deep relationship, which is outside of the physical intimacy, which is happening when you are in a relationship or in a marriage, but you have very deep friendships, which are not necessarily physical, but does that impact, and how does the marriage navigate through that?
See, I would make a distinction between friendships and relationships, intimate relationships. Sure, just because you haven't slept with somebody doesn't mean your relationship with that person is not an extramarital relationship. An emotional affair is as much an affair as is a sexual affair. And, most people come to their defense by saying, but I haven't actually slept with the person. Makes no difference. To me, the key element here is, if somebody is your friend, then you don't mind your partner knowing about that or being, informed about it or even being part of it. But when you have an emotional connect, which is much more intimate with somebody else, and you're actually deceiving your partner, once that element of deception comes in, then it's an emotional affair whether you like it or not. And it's pretty much the same. So I'm afraid I took the justification away from you.
I do feel that men, when they know their wife is having an affair, they fear an emotional affair by the woman, whereas women fear the physical. They just want to know, but have you slept with her? Have you slept with her? If he says, I fell in love with her and all that, I think that's secondary. But have you slept with her? And for men, it's the other way around. That's what I
Can I say something? This side, Shinie. Yeah. My parents were married very briefly, from 1969 to 1971. And my father went away to the US through ship. He didn't fly, he sailed, that much I remember. But very, very briefly they were married, 1969. And my mother had 2 children, can you beat that? And she lost the first. The thing is about divorce. It was a huge taboo. 1960, I'm talking about 1970s, late 70s. She just wouldn't sign the paper, She didn't want to be known as a divorcee or a divorcer. It was huge. And before, there was huge love. You wrote to each other. How charming is that? Now you don't have that. The basic thing I'm finding is lack of trust. So much of dependency on the net, and my goodness, I've never seen it like this. It's scary for me. Marriage is hell of a hard work. If you're cut out, go in. Otherwise, just stay aside. You don't even have to watch. Just, that's what I felt. Because divorce was, my mother just wouldn't sign it. That much I remember. Even when she was, very, very sick, she just didn't want to be known as a divorcee. That much I remember. And even the lady who used to, make garlands in the Austin town, the temple, she knew my mom because she had seen her in the family court. She knew about my mom. I'll never forget that.
Yeah, that's also basically an extension of that old Hindu tradition of saying, die a Sumangali. No? So it's really that you do not want to be a divorcee. But I think, fortunately, that is going out in today's contemporary metropolitan world. And hopefully it will.
I just wanted to add, because we said Sumangali, there was someone who came over for dinner when I was small, home, and told my mother that I can read palms. And he started to read my mother's palm, and he said, you will die a Sumangali. And he thought my mother would be overjoyed by this. But she asked him, what does that mean? What is Sumangali? And he said, that you will die before your husband, so you'll be a married woman when you die. And my mother was like, no way. I want him to die Sumangala. I don't want to be Sumangala.
Hi. So it was mentioned a few times that marriage and monogamy are inherently intertwined. I just wanted to ask your thoughts about this. Do you see scope for marriage and a committed relationship where both the parties are committed to each other's well being, happiness, are there for each other while also being non monogamous? Or do you think those two things are inherently dichotomous?
Hey, whatever works for both of them works for me, okay? I have, as long as they are comfortable with that kind of monogamy and they're committed to each other through it, who can say they shouldn't? But the basic thing is they're still together and they still want to be together. And they're both cool with, with having relationships with others as well. So all I can say is, then you got a good thing going. Just keep it going. But at some point in time, those shouldn't come back to bite them or bite the marriage. And that's what we always need to remember. That's the basis for swinging. Swingers basically are perfectly happy with whoever else their partners go to, as long as they can do the same themselves.
I just wanted to say, oh, sorry.
Sorry. I think that's a very dead marriage, honestly. I can't see. I mean, you really have to ask yourself, what is a marriage? It's a friendship and a deep respect for each other. And if you're just constantly having affairs outside of marriage, I don't know, is there really friendship in that marriage? I don't know. I'm a great one for friendship. Forget anything else. But friendship you must have.
I feel sometimes marriage and your sex drive are two separate things. And whatever the statistics for infidelity are today, like let's say 50% or 70% or 99%, whatever it is, I feel the actual statistic is higher. Because a lot of people are not unfaithful because they don't get a chance. I feel a lot of people would be happy to, be unfaithful if they could get away with it.
Well, the official statistic is 33%, for the record. But, not only that people would like to have extramarital relationships, it comes out of curiosity as well. You wonder how it will be, to sleep with somebody who's not your partner, to get emotionally engaged with that person. But, there's also one more fear today. I think, earlier Selma had said that, technology has made it so easy to have extramarital relationships. But technology has also made it so easy to discover extramarital relationships. And most, affairs are detected or discovered through the mobile phone. So I think that today, I would say with confidence, that almost 95% of extramarital relationships are discovered by their partners. So there's always that fear, particularly if you don't want to lose that EMI, you've got to make sure that, you don't want to get into a relationship. So there's other factors, but the need for curiosity, the need for exploration, I think always does exist. Sometimes it has a life of its own.
Is there a lifespan for these extramarital affairs? I mean, is it like a year, 2 years? Is there some kind of an...
It really depends upon the kind of affair you're talking about, The most classical one is the sexual affair, which could range from a one-night stand to a short-term hookup. Then you have the emotional affair, because there's hardly any emotional connect in the marriage. Those could go on for years and years, because not a lot of sexual activity and actual meeting is involved. Then there is what you call the affair that just happens, the thunderbolt affair.
Okay, I just want to quote you here. In one of his books, he says, the people who are very damn sure they'll never have an affair, an extramarital affair, are usually the ones who end up having it because they are unsuspecting.
Well, yeah, I mean, they're the persons you would least suspect of having an affair. And then you have what's called the exit affair, which happens much more commonly than we think. Where because you don't know how to exit your marriage, you go and have an affair. And I mean, not consciously, of course, it's not as if you actively sit down and plan it, but it just happens. Where you want to get out of the relationship, you don't know how, and the affair actually precipitates it.
And I just want to add that my books are full of affairs. So even though, because I honestly feel you can't legislate morality. That's one thing you can't legislate. And to be sexually attracted to another person, to want to have affairs, these are very human qualities. And if you must have one, please keep it discreet. There's no great virtue in revealing it. That's my advice.
Yeah, don't blog about it. Don't.
Or vlog about it, make a video.
Yeah. My question is around the topic itself, which is till death do us apart. And something that I'm like, maybe Vijay can answer, since he has heard a lot of, as a relationship counselor, he would have heard a lot of questions or the problems that comes from a couple. My point is, I'd like to understand what is the problem, the underlying problem for divorce. Is it because the people, the prospective couple have not understood themselves enough or married for the right reasons? Have they, and what would you suggest to be proactive and ensure that they are having a conscious choice of getting into a relationship in the first place? I know Western countries have a habit of writing vows, and some people even stick to that. But we don't have that in our country. And could that be a reason?
Well, in the first place, I don't know that anybody gets married for the right reason. Okay? It's not as if, there is a format, a formula, and you've ticked all the boxes and you've got everything right. Most people get married when they feel they're ready to get married, and they find a person who they think they can spend the rest of their lives with. And the reasons for divorce are pretty complex. They range from a variety of things. One is infidelity, and then there's a cruelty. In our country, there's this whole dowry drama. There are so many other factors that come in. My biggest difficulty is with the young couples who've been barely married, 3 months, 6 months, who've decided that enough is enough. I can't bear to be with this guy. And why? I don't know. But, I can't connect with them. And they should have thought of it before, but they're thinking of it now. And very often it turns out that, these marriages have pretty much been forced on them. I think if our parents stopped obsessing about this damn thing, let the kids choose whether they want to be married or not. Because staying single is also a choice. Today there's an emerging group of people called the SBCs, or the singles by choice, who are perfectly happy being single. Leave them be. If somebody sees you and you say you're still single, and they say sorry, they don't have to feel sorry for you. You've made a choice. In fact, there are many people who will envy you for choosing to be single. But this obsession with marriage is what we need to get out of. Marriage should evolve. If two people care enough for each other, want to spend the rest of their lives together, does that mean they won't have problems? Of course not. They always have problems. There will always be fights. If couples tell me they're not fighting, I'm concerned for their marriage. Because basically it means they're not engaging with each other. Engagement does produce friction. Friction does produce fights. But finally, the only way we can deal with this is not pushing people into getting married and letting them evolve into it.
I just want to touch very briefly on that reference to Western society. I don't think there's a moral superiority between the West and the East. I really don't. I've never met an Asian man who's not wanting to have some affair or something. There's no great moral superiority.
I don't think, vows are very breakable.
Sorry.
They're very breakable things, okay? You know, vows get broken. That's why so many marriages end up in divorce. So vows don't protect a marriage. What protects a marriage is your perspective of it. You know? If you think of it as a relationship, you're committed to working on it. But despite that, you might still not be able to work on it. And I don't think divorce is such a bad thing. But not within 3 months of getting married. Okay? I mean, you've got to give it some time to mature.
You brought up a point about EMI, and you talked about EMI. So money in matrimony, do they come and talk to you about it? I mean, is it now a sort of a major issue, or is it still love, relationship, affairs, the emotional side?
Money is a big issue in relationships.
It's a big issue, right?
A big issue. And in fact, you know, many people today call it financial infidelity. No? If you have an account that your partner doesn't know of, you're not sharing all your financial, what's called financial opacity, where you don't share all your financial details with your partner. Many people, use it as a reason to get divorced. Because they believe that it should be equally shared, and rightly so, I mean, you can't just say it's your money and my money. There has to be something which is ours, Otherwise, why be married,
You said that marriage has become an institution and you don't subscribe to that being an institution. Do you see marriage as an institution dying out in the future? Especially also what Selma said, the difference between your mother and your daughter. So going forward, do you see the younger generation changing the nature of marriage?
I hope the hell so, because marriage needs to be changed. It needs to be completely redefined, and it should be something that people design for themselves. I sure hope they do. As an institution. I don't think it should be an institution at all. It should just be a relationship.
I think it's under threat, but hopefully it's re-engineered and that we find friendship.
I feel what the Me Too movement and the cat person short story and now what's happening in the Malayalam film industry, it kind of takes the cover of what human beings are really like. And there's a lot of exploitation and a lot of abuse that women go through outside marriage and inside marriage.
Vijay, sorry.
Is marriage is social? Have two individuals ever needed marriage to legitimize their relationship, right? Or is it a social relationship to use an analogy, it's a corporate merger and acquisition between two families, right?
That's what it's turned out to be.
But hasn't it always been the case? And I
That's
think
not-
to reduce it now to only a relationship, devoid of the societal, the societal context, right? That's one. The other thing is the assault by technology. So to reduce this conversation exclusively to a relationship between two individuals that has never needed marriage.
No, see, marriage basically represents commitment to each other. You don't have to be married.
Yeah, but that's for the legitimization of the bloodline.
That's what I'm saying. You don't even need to legitimize it.
Yeah, okay.
You don't even need to legitimize your bloodline. Today your DNA testing online can do that for you. Basically, what you need to be very clear about is you don't have to perform roles. Once if it's a corporate merger and acquisition, then, the woman is perfectly justified in kicking the mother-in-law out. Because once two companies merge, some people have to leave. So the point is, you can't extend that analogy too much either. But if people stop playing roles and just start relating to each other, and one thing people have asked me, living together is very convenient. It isn't. in my experience, people who are in live-in relationships find it so much harder to separate than couples who are in marriages. Simply because they've had to work so much harder to keep their relationship up and running. So the legal part of it is only a piece of paper. But there used to be a concept of what's called common law marriage. And there's also a concept in France, for instance, you can get into a civil union, which does not amount to a marriage. And all those are only for the legal purposes of protecting the person who needs most protection. In our case, that is the woman.
I just wanted to, I don't know if that question's come from Heigel's book, Property, which traces how marriage came about. It is a legal process to protect assets.
I also feel that the inequality that's in the marriage starts premarital because women are supposed to want marriage much more than men. So there was this whole period of time where it was like women are chasing the men and men are running away from that. So when the marriage does take place, it starts off on that note of inequality. Like, you've got what you wanted. I'm here unwillingly. This is not what I wanted. This is what you wanted.
Hi. Marriage, the institution of marriage as we know it today is a very recent institution. But if you look at over the last, say, 8,000-9,000 years, it was a very different institution wherein essentially women were property and they were traded and they were bartered. This belief of a monogamous relationship between one man and one woman is an extremely recent phenomenon in human society. And if you go back to evolutionary biology, or even just anthropological studies of, hunter-gatherer species, the evidence seems to suggest that we've never been a pair-bonded species, and that if that is true, that has huge implications on how we are as a biological creature in terms of our needs from a relationship. And so my question is, do you believe that human beings are biologically pair-bonded? And the second part of the question is, the future of relationships. We've seen since the early 19th century, the first wave of the feminist movement to the 1970s to the early 21st century, to the cry for equality of homosexual rights, the future of the institution of marriage, what would that look like? Would it look more like a civil union? Or would it look more like a institution where it doesn't matter if it's 2 people or 3 people, anybody can come and create a partnership that is right for them? Sorry, so 2 questions. Are we pair bonded? And B, what is the future of marriage?
This is that old trope of the nature of the beast, which has been used to justify almost everything that happens in marriages. Are we intrinsically pair bonded? It's very hard to say. But you need to understand that genetic modification takes place with adaptation. Are we today more pair bonded than our forefathers ever were? Yes, we are. So in that sense, it's not as if it's that difficult to be pair bonded. And I believe that we can't justify the nature of the beast. This is an argument that's been presented to me often, that, marriage is a man-made institution. So is democracy, so is banking, so is finance, so is pretty much everything else. We've developed those institutions to keep some sanity in society. And as far as the future of relationships, future of marriage, again, I would say for it to be like a civil union, which I think is an excellent form of being with each other. But for that to happen, in our country, certainly women need to be far, far less disadvantaged. And I don't see that happening during my lifetime, certainly. But certainly over the next, 150 odd years, maybe. And hopefully by then, we won't be talking about marriage. You know, we'll just be doing whatever we want, being perfectly happy with it.
Thank you all for listening. And what a complex subject, what a complex, deep subject that our panelists unpacked with gravitas and lightness. A big round of thank you to Selma, Vijay, Shinie, and Prajwal.